brought it down a little bit. So, welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Galaxy Show. I'm Mark Bridge, and I'm here to talk movies, TVs, all that good stuff. This one is going to be a little different. Basically, just going to be talking about one particular subject, and that's the MCU, the X-Men, or mutants rather, in the MCU, and how I think they'll be implemented. And I'm sure there's a lot of videos you can watch on YouTube with people sharing their opinions and how that could be happening. So this is just my take on it. Hopefully it's different enough that it doesn't feel like it's a repeating value. But here we go, and check it out. All right, so how do I think the X-Men will be implemented into the MCU? And the reason why a lot of people have discussed this amongst themselves for a long time is that, unlike, say, the Fantastic Four, or let's say characters that have been introduced already, Doctor Strange in Phase 3. By this time, I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe was maybe 8 years old. I think 8 years into their run, and they were just introducing a brand new character, and it was simple enough. Like, Doctor Strange hasn't been introduced yet, so we'll introduce the character. So, Fantastic Four, I think it hasn't been introduced yet, but I think the way it's looking, it should be the final film in Phase 4, which is very saying, it's Phase 4, Fantastic Four. Best way to end it. Fantastic Four, I think, is an easier group to introduce in the MCU because, their power set is given, kind of like Spider-Man. Spider-Man was bitten by a radioactive spider, so he got his spider powers. Fantastic Four got hit with cosmic rays. I don't know if they're gonna do that for the origin of this new iteration, but rest assured, a lot of the setup that's happened in the MCU so far will inform how they get their powers. I think there'll be sword agents or working with sword, and they'll be on a space station. And if I were writing the Fantastic Four, I would make Franklin Richards already a thing. That they like the Reed and Sue already are married. They have Franklin. They could possibly have Valerie. No, but I'll give them Franklin first, and Franklin would be sort of the one of the introductions of mutants. Like, he'll already be a mutant, super intelligent, and they brought him along on the trip because he's very smart, and they're trying to harness that intelligence by having him help out with creating whatever technology they got to create in space, whatever, on a sword base, and that could possibly be how they get their powers, by some accident that happened on the space station, and they get their powers. So I would say, again, easier to introduce than the mutants, because the mutants are just so vast in terms of not only how many they are, but like their historical presence in the Marvel universe has been so intricate that it could easily lose that value if they just all of a sudden appear. But I'll get to it, so bear with me here. It's gonna be a long tangent of mine, but this is my show, and I get to do it. All right. So I already gave like a little hint, like with the Fantastic Four, of how you could sort of like introduce mutants, and then of course you could retroactively say Wanda and her brother Pietro were mutants. I mean, WandaVision sort of hinted at as much, because in the show, basically Agatha said, "Well, listen, yes, the Infinity Stone amplified your power, but it amplified something that was already there." Now, you could say, "Oh, she was saying that she was a witch, whatever," and it just basically amplified her witch powers, but that wouldn't explain Pietro. Like, is Pietro a witch as well, or a wizard? and it just made him a speedster. Like, wouldn't he have like hex magic as well? So I believe that they Marvel is also seeding that to say that they're mutants. So again, that's that could be like, retroactively saying that they're mutants, and also the whole Frank Richards thing. So that's a little sprinkle in Phase 4 without actually mentioning mutants. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation. Now, if you watch a lot of videos, a lot of people speculate that, you could bring in mutants by way of multiverse, right? Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is coming out, so by the end of that movie, uh, mutants could just all of a sudden appear and blah 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 blah, right? That's cool, and that would be I guess, a clean way to introduce mutants, to explain why mutants haven't been around the MCU for so long. Yeah, you could go that way. But then it also robs us of, like I said, the rich history of mutants in in the Marvel universe, right? And then, because you wouldn't have Wolverine all of a sudden being this very old character. Yeah, you could say, yeah, he was an old character in his universe, but like, you also wanted, you missed the opportunity of saying, oh, he was an old character that interacted with Steve in World War, and you kind of like, you missed that whole thing. And then characters like Apocalypse also gets lost in the dust. Like, okay, where was his character in the MCU? So here's my school of thought here. So it took a while for the Avengers to be built up, right? And if it was one thing I know about Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, is that they are very methodical when it comes to planning, right? They're not in any rush. They're the leaders of their genre, so they're not in any rush. They're not in, like, their competition is so far behind. Is like, they're pretty much the Hare at this point. Now they can't make the mistake of being the Hare in the book, where he kind of slows down because he's just, he's like, I'm already in the lead, and then the competitors catch up. But for now, they're in the lead right now, so they can take their time. When it came to the Avengers, they took their time. They came out with 5 films prior to build to the Avengers, right? And then at the end of that movie, you saw Thanos, and the logical thing would be, oh, the next Avengers movie, Thanos would be the bad guy. But no, the next Avengers movie was Ultron as the bad guy. It took them, I want to say, what, 6 or so years before they got to Thanos. They really built up Thanos in the MCU before you got to see him, and the payoff was so excellent because at that point you were like bursting at the seams to see this character and what he can do, and he did not disappoint. And that's because Marvel built on a foundation, so that by the time you got to Thanos was fighting an established Avengers team, where we cared about each and every character that Thanos faced off with. So that by the time, spoilers for the minor percent of you who haven't seen the MCU yet, when he snapped and half our heroes disappeared, we felt that. You know what I mean? Because Marvel took their time to build each and every one of these characters before they got thrown into this massive event. And I believe the X-Men and mutants in general will be approached the same way, right? Number one, the reason why I think Marvel will make this approach is, well, twofold. One is they want to build the characters. Simple enough. They want to build up to that moment to where when these characters are introduced, you feel it. Two, relatively recently, we've had a string of X-Men movies, right? So basically, we're in a break now. Let's take a break. Let's put that far behind. So when we get to our mutants, by the time you get to our mutants, like the stink of the bad X-Men movies. Like, not all of them were bad, but quite a few were terrible. The stink of those movies will be in the rearview mirror, and we'll be fully ready. I know us fanboys are like, give us some X-Men now. We're ready. Give us some X-Men now. But trust me, there's some people out there who are casual watchers of these things, or casual to hardcore, who have the sense that, yeah, we're tired of X-Men. Give them a rest. Trust me, they're out there. Like, you would think that they're not, but they are. There are people out there. So you get those people going like, oh yeah, we haven't seen X-Men in a while. I wonder what we should get a new X-Men movie. Those people need to simmer down from the stink of those movies before they get a new X-Men movie. So how is a way? So yeah, I mean, multiverse thing, cool. That's cool, but I just don't think that's how Kevin Feige is gonna do it. Because that's almost like cheating. It's like a cheat code, and he never cheats. he always does things that that he wants to build to that moment. He wants everything to feel like when you actually go back to the beginning of the saga, that you can see the things building up, right? So and in this term, going back to, I guess, WandaVision, would be the start of this new phase. He wants you to feel that build, right? So phase 4 obviously is like a building phase. It's just introducing new characters, introducing or continuing some unfinished business from characters that were introduced in phase 3. But yeah, it's really a rebuilding phase, and then sort of to end that phase will be Fantastic Four, which will be the new status quo, the new heroes, the new bright spot in the MCU. And I think it's by design, because the Fantastic Four would represent a bright spot, because I believe the next couple of phases coming down the line will be in the MCU's darkest. Val from Falcon and the Winter Soldier said it best when she said things are about to get weird, and when they do, we won't need a Captain America. We'll need a U.S. agent. And I believe that. I believe that's Kevin Feige telling you guys. All this talk about, where can they go from here after Infinity War and Endgame? Like, that was the crescendo of it all. Like, how can they possibly top that? Trust me, they can. A lot of people are skeptical that they can't. I'm like, listen, dude, they barely scratched the surface of what the kind of stories that Marvel can possibly tell in the movies, right? And the fact that, I mean, they barely scratched it when they didn't have X-Men and Fantastic Four. Now that they have X-Men and Fantastic Four, oh my god, it's over. It's over. It's like, it's endless possibilities in terms of the stories they can tell, right? So again, no rush. They're not in any rush at all, right? And so I believe Phase 5 will be dedicated to introducing mutants, not the X-Men. Mutants. That's going to be number one goal of Phase 5, is introducing mutants in the MCU. So, how do we preserve what's happened in the MCU so far, but retroactively said, well, mutants were a part of that universe for a long time? Super easy, right? Mutants, we've always heard about, in our reality anyway, gifted people, right? And some has go as far as that, oh, we can't explain how that person is able to do certain things. You always hear about, these legends that are told like that, but you've never seen it, or you've seen it, but we always thought it was fake. You could apply that to the MCU, where people talk about people with gifts, special powers, but it's never explained. And then, like, especially with when the Avengers Age of Ultron, where where Cap says, "Oh, and enhances on the field." That obviously they couldn't say mutants at the time because they didn't own the rights, but it it clearly established that Shield and the Avengers who basically inherited Shield files, um, they had a term for people who had powers that weren't really explained, and that was enhanced. So you could keep that aspect of it, enhanced people with enhanced powers, but there was no one to fully explain this phenomena, right? So I have this really cool idea, and I'm going back to Fantastic Four to kind of explain that. What if at the end of Fantastic Four, a super cool post-credit scene of Fantastic Four would be Reed Richards going to Wakanda, going to a secret area, sitting in front of a bunch of people, one including Doctor Strange, one including Black Panther or whoever becomes the new Black Panther, um, uh, and them introducing a new character, Professor X, and that would be the birth of the Illuminati, right? So the Illuminati could be a thing in the MCU. So here we go. Here's the multi prong attack in terms of bringing the mutants in the MCU, and this will include Disney Plus shows. We could do an Illuminati Disney Plus show, right? Which basically the premise of that show could be all these sort of heads of their fields um, trying to figure out how to make sure Earth is safe from universal threats, right? And one of the aspect of that is Professor X is there, and he's there to represent this new phenomena of uh, gifted people, and him explaining what exactly they are. His field of studies was the X gene, right? What is exactly is the X gene? How do people get the X gene? Or like, is there something in particular that produces that, right? And reason why he's there too is that the recent uptick in people with the X gene has risen significantly since Endgame. More so Infinity War and Endgame. And you could, I think one of the early theories of how mutants are introduced is Thanos' snap. So the radiation from that caused mutants to arrive. You could use some of that actually. You could say, well, the radiation that was sent off was so strong that a lot of people's X gene that lay dormant that never really activated, because like I said, there could be a lot of people with X gene, but it's just laying so dormant that it never manifests itself, right? But because of that whole big snap, a lot more people's X gene got activated, and then so the likelihood of kids manifesting the ability once they hit puberty had risen significantly since Endgame, and that's where he had to really step up and say, "Hey, yes, this is my field. Now more people are starting to notice. Now I have to put my foot out there and sort of make my presence known. First, I'll make my presence known with these secret cabal type characters in the Illuminati to help sort of facilitate this control. Make sure that everything is controlled, because like people start to get scared. Like, what's happening? Like, so he's trying to navigate that very tightrope of like people fearing mutants by putting his best foot forward first and having these guys back him, right? Having the Avengers, having the Fantastic Four, having Wakanda be a part of that movement to say, hey, yes, there's something happening in our world. Don't panic, folks. We got you, right? So that could be one of the story points to the Illuminati series, right? Another series could be the Sword series, right? Do a series on Sword, and one of the thing is them investigating mutations, right? Like, it's like that could be an X-File type show where each episode is a new You could have an overarching tale, but you could make Sword an actual X Files type show, and John Woo could be a part of that, and Darcy, right? So they're going out investigating certain things, and one of the cases they could be working on is a mutant, and them finding out exactly what mutants are, right? So again, Illuminati and Sword help inform what's going on in Phase 5 of the MCU. And then I got one more Disney Plus show that could appear in season in Phase 5. And granted, all of this things that I've mentioned before is before an X-Men film is even on the table. This is way before. Basically, we'll know about mutants before the X-Men movies hit, right? So, another show that we could deal with, and I know this is probably gonna be like almost cheating, but it's not. We could do a Wolverine show. Basically introduce Wolverine before the X-Men, right? So here you have Wolverine. You could do a weapon. It could be a Weapon X story where he starts off as an agent, go into his backstory, and then them capturing him and implanting him with the adamantium, and him escaping, and big explosions and all that stuff. A cool 6 episode Weapon X story, dope, right? Or you could do the whole Wolverine origin that Paul Jenkins and Andy Kubert did, where you start from the 1800s and just do that story. That would be cool. Or you could do a Madripoor story where it's just basically a sort of gangster / pirate cool story that's based in the underworld with Wolverine as Patch. Either way, that would be a cool way to sort of put center stage a significant mutant in the MCU. Then you could end Phase 5 with an X-Men movie, right? I would go as far as this. What if Phase 5 starts with an Avengers movie instead of the whole adage of like Phase 1 ended with the Avengers movies, Phase 2 sort of ended with Avengers 2, but that really Ant-Man was the end of that, but Avengers was the big climax of Phase 2, and Avengers Infinity War and Endgame were the big sort of climax of Phase 3. You begin Phase 5 with an Avengers movie. Have it be like, all right, all these characters that you got introduced to or put more in the forefront in Phase 4, now they're part of the new Avengers, right? Make that a thing. Instead of like the team coming together, you establish a new team, but how well can that new team work where people are crying, who is going to be the new Avengers? Who leads the Avengers? Because that's one of the themes that's been prevalent in this new phase, right? You have all these popular Avengers characters, but there are no Avengers team, really. So who are the new Avengers? That could be the theme of the next Avengers movie, and you could begin Phase 5 with that. And then Phase 5 building up mutants, seeding mutants here and there, over there, and then the big climax of Phase 5 is the X-Men. And you treat the X-Men movie as you would treat an Avengers movie. This big event film, right? And no, do not let Magneto be the bad guy that one. As a matter of fact, I would go as far as to say Magneto would be like, basically use Jonathan Hickman's run as a blueprint, right? Let Magneto be part of the team in that he's a very anti-hero type character. He takes no prisoners, but he's one of the good guys. Because eventually, in all these movies, you watch all the past X-Men movies, and even if you're a comic book reader, eventually he joins the X-Men all the time. So let's not go with that territory, because it's a well-worn territory already. so by the time this movie we see X-Men, he should already be a part of the team, um, and utilize villains that we really haven't seen in the X-Men films yet. And I think the perfect villain for the very first X-Men movie should be Cassandra Nova. That's Xavier's twin sister. Well, not really. Basically, they were in vitro, and he sort of killed her. It's a really complex story, but basically she would be the antagonist, and her main goal is to destroy his dream. And what better way to do it is to destroy his dream right when he's about to accomplish something, right? So before the fear and hatred of mutants start, you're seeing more mutants, but there's no fear yet. Well, there's hesitation, like, I don't know, who are these characters? But because of how popular the Avengers are and how popular the Fantastic Four will be, assumably, that by the time mutants start popping up, they're not going to be like, oh my god, I should fear these characters. I should, it'll be like, oh, I guess these are candidates for the new Avengers. So the basis of the X-Men movie could be Cassandra Nova turning that wonderment of mutants appearing to fear. Like, that would be a cool twist on that movie, where you actually see the birth of fear of mutants in that very film. And that's how you end your Phase 5 with an X-Men movie where all of a sudden the wonderment of mutants appearing becomes fear, and that leads right into Phase 6, where you deal with mutant persecution and stuff going on with the mutants. And then you could have a two-parter. You could do a two-parter Phase 6 ending, like your Infinity War Endgame, with the first part being Avengers versus X-Men, and then the second part being Secret Wars. Because I believe that they're gonna go at that route. Like, there's seeds already planted with the multiverse stuff going on right now. That's definitely seeds planting for the basically the Secret Wars event that's coming up. And I know the Russo says they would love to come back and do Secret Wars. So I think this is probably one of the things that Kevin Feige probably told them, is like, yeah, we'll eventually get to it, and guess what, we'll call you. So yeah, I could definitely see a world where in Phase 6, the two-parter in this case would be Avengers versus X-Men. That movie ends, and some sort of tragedy happens that leaves the world open for another big takeover from the Beyonder, or the Beyonders, depending on which version they go with, and all the multiverses coming together, clashing into one big universe for a big war called the Secret Wars. And that's your next sort of event film, so to speak. So yeah, that's my take on how I think the MCU will be integrated. How the mutants will be integrated in the MCU. Hopefully, I made myself clear, and you like that idea. What do you think of that idea? So comment down below, and let me know your thoughts. So in the meantime, while I'm wrapping it up, I can give you the email. Oops. So that would be the email. You can hit us up and let have anything you want to ask, or any topic you want to discuss, or what you even thought about my little theory. You can email there at the pgshow at popculturegalaxy.com. All right. So yeah, that's it, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and join me next time for the next episode of the Pop Culture Galaxy Show. So until next time, folks, peace.